Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is K1 and we are going to be picking up exactly where we left off. We had just finished our dry brushing from last video or clips that we had, and we are going to get started with doing some washes and then actually doing some painting and layers. These are the models that we had from last time. I'm pretty sure you recall. So this is the one that is a little bit too bright, and this is the one that we stopped and then dry brush again to matte it down a little bit. But we're going to do a washing so you can see how they come out, and you guys will be able to do this at home. Let me just adjust a little bit here because I need a little bit more stable platform. So once again, we're using this poster tack. You can see here the poster tack to make a little bit of a kind of stand so that we can put our models on, and that way we don't have to actually be touching our models. They'll just stick to the stand itself. So here we got two of them. These are some pots that paint pots that I don't use anymore, right? So that's the stuff we're going to be working on here. And once again, our music is brought to you by Sanchuk official channel for YouTube. So I want to say thank you, shout out to him. And I'll put this, hopefully it's not going to be too loud, right? And we are going to just jump in here. And once again, I have my water and I have my paints. I did a little bit of a pre-mixture so it won't be too dark and it won't be too bright. So what I'm doing right now is I'm doing the actual wash. So as you can see, you have regular paint here, which I've added quite a bit of water. You can tell when I pull my brush across, you see how just watery it is. You see how watery that is? That's kind of what you're going to want to be getting. It's easier to see if I spread it out rather than keep it all in one spot, which I'm kind of doing just because I have experience, so I kind of know what the consistency is. So you really want it really light to where you put it across, you can see it's translucent or transparent, however you want to call it, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to start over here with our brighter one. You can see that, right? The model is the one that was dry brushed a little bit brighter than the other ones. So this is what the model looks like up close, dry brushed, right? This is what the darker one looks like. Alright, so you can see the difference. One is a bit brighter, one is re-dry brush so that it wouldn't be so bright. Alright, so you can see the difference. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you go bright, you can do this wash and then it'll dull it down. Right, so you want to make sure you have plenty of water in the wash. That's important because it makes it very thin, and then you're just going to put it down across the model itself. You can see here there's still parts that are, there's still parts that are black here underneath, right? So when you do this wash, you'll get some of that part that is black, right? And you're just going to throw on this wash that we have on there. It's not that big of a deal. Because it's so thin and translucent, the brighter paint that was dry brushed on there will still go through, but it's not going to be as bright because the darker wash has gone over it and it's kind of dulling it down a bit. And as you can see, it's just, I'm just throwing it in here everywhere. Mostly where there's crevices or over pieces of the model or parts of the model that you want to have dulled down because they're too bright. Now if you need a little bit darker, you can grab, as you can see, it's not completely mixed in the colors that I have completely. You see have here mostly the lighter green is mixed in, but here you still see some of the darker green. So if you need to get a little bit of a darker shade in your wash, grab some of that darker paints and then dab your brush into that and then put it into the wash and then thin it out with some water and then just apply it generally to the area, or generously to the area, or in the general area that you want matted down a little bit, right? So you can see it's very watery, but because it's thin layer, it should dry up pretty quickly. So we shouldn't have to worry about that too much. I'm going to throw some on the bow here, just because I feel like if I do that, I'll be able to get some of the detail out of the bow that I don't seem to be getting with the dry brush, or that I missed over because I didn't focus on the bow so much as I did on other areas. So if I do this, it'll sneak in there into the cracks and give me a better shape. And remember, you can always use your fingers or your paper towel. If you put too much in there, you want to get some out of the recesses or whatever. But like I said, because it's so thin and it's translucent or transparent, however you want to say it, it's actually pretty good at just going in there and dulling down some of the paint that was on there before, and then drying up pretty light. I have gone and instead of dry brushing, I use this wash technique with some of the other models that I have here, which I will show you once I'm done doing our display models here, so you can see how they dry up and come out where if you did not dry brush them. If you want to just hand paint them all, well, you are hand painting them, but what I'm saying is not use a dry brushing technique. You can do that, and as you can see, these this little tack, or the framing putty is what I call it, is what I learned that it was, because it's for framing and putting up posters and that kind of thing. I found that it's very helpful if you just put them on an old paint pot, or even if you don't have an old paint pot, just use one that you're not using. Like right now, we're not using, blue or gray or some other color like that. Don't forget, every once in a while you want to throw in a little bit of water in here in case it starts drying. I guess usually only if it starts drying, but just throw it in there and it'll keep your paint mixture still usable rather than it drying up and getting like little paint scabs on there, right? And then you just, like I said, you just throw it on there generously. It's not that big of a deal where it goes, because when it dries up pretty thin, and you usually have to do more than one layer of washes if you want it to retain any of the particular color with any kind of I would say any kind of degree of saturation is really the words I'm looking for here, right? So when you do that, you go over it, and it looks like it might be shiny, but that's just because it's very wet, right? So you just go over into the general pieces again. Like I said, wherever there's cracks or whatever part you want to dull down, or if you want to add a little bit of a translucent color, kind of like a base, so see what you're going with, you can do that too, which is what I'm doing here with the bow. And if you want, like I said, you can use your finger, you can use your paper towel. I'm going to dry off my brush, and then you can see here, you can pick up some of this wash or paint with just the brush. You wipe it down, run it over the area, and then it picks it up. And you're pretty much finished with that area, right? So this is the one that we did a little bit of dry brushing and then decided to paint. So I'm going to do a little bit more of this wash on this model as well, just so you can see how it all comes out from, you know, deciding to do a complete dry brushing and then wash, or deciding to do a dry brush up to a certain point, which was really light here, as you can see. It was really light on this model where I decided to stop doing the dry brushing, just so I can show you the different techniques when it came to painting the models and things like that, which we will get into, of course, and we are actually getting into. Maybe just a little bit today, but for most of this we're going to be concentrating on the washes, which requires a lot of water. You see right here in this part that has a lot of black showing. Right, we put it in the crevices and just then layered all over. Right, so if it's looking too thick, you know, you can just double check it right here. Add water and then it'll thin it out, so that you don't lose the highlights or anything like that, and you're not just throwing a big mess of paint over your model that you took time dry brushing or highlighting. Right. So that's the one thing you want to remember constantly. These washes are supposed to be thin, translucent, so they can get in the crevices, add a little bit of paint, and dull down whatever brighter paint you have on it, which you will most likely be highlighting anyway after you've done the wash, because it's just generally how people do it, and it's just done because the wash, usually being dark, does matte or dull the color, if that's an easier word for you to use. It dulls the brighter color that you're going over. Now you can do a wash that does not go over your basic colors, and basically you'll just focus on putting into the crevices. Like if I had the color scheme pretty much to where I wanted it finished, but I just wanted to get a little bit into these little areas where the hand is. You can see there's like a lacing on there, or into the crevices where there's the armpit and stuff. You can just kind of dab it in there and just kind of dab it and get that part. And then if you want to just rub something across it, and it'll take off the top layer, or make it really translucent and wait until it dries and then do another one. Right? So that's another way you can do it if you're just looking to get the crevices or the line that distinguish different parts. This is what I was talking about before, about that line or shadow that casts when two objects meet each other, like at the end of your sleeve, or if you have a watch on, it happens. I can show you. When you put on your watch, right, there's usually a line here where the skin meets the watch, and that part you just use a wash and get it dark. Right? So we are going to continue. Let me see if these are done. These are almost dried. Right? So So I'm going to show you these other models that I have that I did the wash with just a few minutes ago. Right, this is the model. I want to make sure that you can see the whole thing. I'm going to spin it around. I'm not sure if you can see the green, but the green I did do a wash on the banner here, going down. Right, I did it on the wingtips, and as you can see, there's a little bit of color that was held by here, the cloak itself right here. Right, but overall it is very translucent. You could still see the black in the raised areas of the model itself, but the darker areas, or I should say the recessed areas, have gotten that dark green color, which is what I wanted, while at the same time giving us a little bit of a translucent green on the rest of the model itself. So that's kind of what it looks like. Now, having a lighter portion dry brushed, right, will give us a matted or dulled paint scheme. This one has been washed about 3 or 4 times, so as you can see, the paint is not only in the crevices but in all the other general areas. So it takes a while for the color to build up, but it does get there eventually. It's not all just wasted time, as you can see. On this model I also did the bow, like I was talking about the other model, about showing the detail and being able to see what I am going to be working with. You can see how the wash has snuck into the crevices and really differentiated the lines on the actual model. So that is basically what's going to be happening here with our models. As you can see, it's already not as bright as it was before. All right. And this is the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take less water on here. And then just kind of go over this area that I want to be more painted than the rest. Like these here. These top layers where you see the chest and some of the other particular details, I'm not going to worry about so much. You can see I'm going to be doing a little bit of the dabbing here in the dark areas so that they do have the darker green color here in the recesses, like I was showing you in the other models. When it dries, you'll be able to see it, and it'll be a darker green rather than a black, which is what we're going for, or at least what I'm going for in this particular case. These little jewels, I'm going to just completely dab them because I want them to be darker, because jewels really have that kind of effect. Even emeralds or gems or any kind of gem really has an effect, especially when you add them with a light, where some of it looks really dark or black, like the emerald, like I was saying, looks dark, really, really dark, and then it has a shine to it, if you ever seen one, or at least a dark, colored emerald will show that. So that part I will probably do a little bit more painting here on the shoulder pad, where I want it a little bit darker but not black. I'm going to do the same thing. As you can see here. And even through the paint, with the little wash here that I'm doing with less actual water in it, you can still see the highlighted areas that were dry brushed. You can still see it coming out through the paint. But the paint does get into the crevices and it all looks like a darker green with some highlighting in there. which is what we are going for. Right? So this one is, yeah. This is a lighter mixture, but it still needs some water to make it into a wash, a usable wash. Like you said, that I did a little bit too much of, so I'm gonna wipe off my brush. So I'm gonna wipe off my brush, and then I'm gonna pick up some of the paint, which is mostly dry now, so that wasn't helpful. But it's okay. This is the earlier stages, so we can just paint over that. It's no big deal, right? So hopefully you can see everything that I'm doing, and everything does seem to be visible on screen. I am really trying to make sure that I keep this in frame and that you can see what I'm doing. Right? So let me just wash off my brush here. As I go into the next model, set this on the side. This one should have been mostly dried by now. I'm going to do the same thing. Go over some of the areas that is going to be in the background or darkened areas. But I don't want necessarily black, I want them green. Because a lot of times, at least most of the time I should say, at least in the real world, there is not a straight black shadow. The shadow is a very dark version of whatever color it is happens to land on. So in this case, it being green, we want to make sure the shadow is dark but is still in essence green, right? So that's what we're doing here. And then in some of the areas we're going to go over and it's going to be brown and different colors of green. Some of it we're going to go over and it's going to be lighter. Some we're going to say, well, that's too much. We're going to go over with some other areas and it's going to be dark green. So, I mean, the dark green really comes out very well on the lighter color. You know, as much as it comes out as well as a black primer or black surface to start with, but I don't know, you just get more richness when painted over a lighter color, right? Let's see, this part is not quite dry yet. So what we're gonna do is, with this model, remember, you can always go back and do a darker color later on. What we're going to do is we're going to start doing some lighter painting. So I'm going to use this light green that I have and put it here and mix it in with this this darker green color that I have. What I'm shooting for, I guess, is kind of the color of grass, you can say, but not quite as bright. You can see that green right there. I'm going to drag it and then get myself a nice greenish color. There you go, see? So I still have darker green. I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but we still have a darker green here in this area, and then we have a lighter green in this area. So we can work back and forth between the two colors and not have to worry about remixing anything. And if we need to, we could add a yellow or a white to make it brighter. or you know, we can make it darker if we need to, right? So like I was saying, I'm going to go to work painting this model. Let me see, this is a round number 2 brush. I'm going to use a regular brush. This is a, if I remember, this is a 0 or a 1 brush will do, right? So I'm going to paint this area here a lighter green, but I like doing layers. I do. Ever since I learned how to paint layers rather than, you know, I don't know how you would describe it. I guess just straight paint, like you just dip your brush in paint and then put it on there. I like doing layers because it comes out smooth and light. So I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do it here because I think I'm going to do it kind of like a pattern where it's light and dark, light and dark. Here, make sure this is still in focus. Alright, so you can see what I'm doing. Make sure I keep my paint thin. So like I said, I'm going to do a light, dark, light, dark. So this here is going to be light. And remember, you don't have to paint all the way up to the other piece of cloth here, right? You can see there's a dark line there. Almost looks black, but because of our wash that we put on there, it's actually just a dark green because the green is translucent and some of the black still shows from underneath. So that gives us a really good defining line without it being too cartoony, as you can see. Hopefully you can see that, right? So you can see here the light, dark, light, and then the lines in between that kind of make the shadow and kind of define each piece. So that's what we're going for, or at least that's what I am going for. It's just a little bit harder to find the areas that you're using some of the other parts, like here, right? This would be the dark area that corresponds with this side, and then this would be the lighter area that corresponds with that other side. So like I said, you don't have to go all the way to the line or to the other piece of cloth, or the two objects are meeting, right? But you want to go right close to it. Here I'm going to do these little threads here and paint it just so it'll come out a nicer greenish color. I'm going to do the same thing with the pauldrons, but because the underside is darker, I'm going to do the top part as light, right? Hopefully you can still see this, yeah. I'll paint this side. There we go. As you can see, we've done that, right? The mask, let me see, I'm going to do a little bit of green on the mask. Maybe I'll change the color up and paint it brown later on, which is fine because it'll go over the green really easily. Right, let's see here. And you don't want to go all the way to the other objects, as you can see here. Right? And I think I'm going to do the chest piece, or the shirt, whatever it is. I'm going to do it the same. I'm going to do it lighter green, just because we can do shadows and contours on the chest piece. This one is obviously a girl, so we can have we can paint it in a way that gives us or accentuates the appearance of the curves on the model itself. Right? There we go. And then, let's see, we're going to do this little top piece here too. I don't know if that's part of the pauldron or that's part of the part that's clicked onto the cape, but that's what that's going to be. So as you can see, it's really kind of simple. You figure out what you're going to paint, how you're going to paint it, and then we'll use some simple layering or painting techniques that'll help you create the desired effect. So here I'm going to wash, not necessarily wash, but make a watered down version of this lighter color that I'm doing, just so it'll give me an idea of where I'm going to be. What part I'm going to be going here. This part might end up being brown or green, but for now we're just going to put it some brighter green color. This wash is, I'm going to do, or not necessarily a wash, but this watered down version, I guess you can call it a wash. I'm going to go over the areas of the cape that I want it to be, that I want to be brightest, because maybe I will go over it with an actual darker wash again later on, as you can see here, right? It really just depends on how you want to go, alright? So you have the areas where the light is hitting it the most. You're going to have with some of this lighter washed, or lighter paint that's been thinned down, alright? You can see here. And some of the part that hasn't been thinned down, you're just going to put on your brush, scrape it off, and then make your brush a little bit flat so you can use the edge, just run it along the raised parts here. Remember, when you're doing using the edge, you still got to be dragging your brush across and then slightly turning it, kind of so you can still keep a point on where you're putting your brush, or where the tip is connecting the model, so that you get the effect that you desire rather than it going everywhere, rather than just on the raised areas of the cape that we are working on. Right? So that's what it ends up looking like. Right. And it's going to be the same thing for these models. This one obviously is the one that is needs to be dulled down a little bit. So I'm going to water this down, make myself a new fresh layer of the lighter paint, and then I'm going to go into this area and cover this part that's light here. Right? Here we go. We're going to go over it. So we have this lighter solid color paint on here. Right. So this is going to be light. Let's see, I believe I am going to make a darker version on the chest, so I'm going to skip that part and then go down here to whatever this is he's wearing, or she could be wearing, and I'm going to hit this spot here, hit the spot in the back, and then do the same thing on the front. And I'm going to continue doing this for the rest of the model, for the parts that I want painted in this color, or at least the part that I want highlighted. I'm going to start using this color to highlight the models. Right, as you can see. Remember, I will like to do layers, so I am continuously thinning down my paint. and make sure I get all the amount that I want and the consistency that I want on my paintbrush. Sometimes it gets away from you, but that's just the nature of painting with these water-based paints, right? But like I said, if it does get away from you, just clean off your brush and then go over the area that has excessive paint and then just take it off. Like we did before, I'm going to go over here in this area here and give it a thin layer. Of paint, right? Make sure it grabs. See? So the part that was just plain dry brushing, where you can see a little bit powder or streak, now looks like a solid color. Right? And we'll basically be doing the same thing across the entire model itself. I will show you some of these jewels that I'm going to paint in a certain color. So I want to make sure I get part of this. Right, so it's going to look something like that. And then you're going to do a darker part around the edges, and then a lighter in a smaller and smaller area until you get the highlight at the very top. Right? So we are going to keep going here. And remember, we have, I do take requests on what models I will be painting after these wood elves. If you want to see how to paint a certain particular model from the Warhammer line that I may have, I will gladly bust out the model and paint it here with you guys. If you have any color schemes that you would like to run by me and I would be willing to paint them, then I will go ahead and do that here in our videos that we have every week, and I will go with you step by step on how to paint the models. If you have interest in a model that I don't own, but you want me to paint it and go through with it step by step on how to paint it, I do have a donations button. You can donate through PayPal, and I will go ahead and pick up that model. If you send me a message along with that PayPal donation telling me what model it is, from what line, and I will go ahead and pick that up and paint it here with you guys every week, every Wednesday. We're here painting our models, doing our hobby, playing our games. I am thinking about actually showing you a game of this Warhammer or any other tabletop strategy games that I play. Not necessarily from Games Workshop, it's just Games Workshop is something that I'm very familiar with. The only thing is I have to go to a neutral place that's a hobby shop, I guess a neutral hobby shop that doesn't happen to be owned by Games Workshop, because Games Workshop has a policy about cameras and showing the game or it being recorded for the materials. I don't know particularly why, even though I did work for Games Workshop. I don't know particularly why they do not allow filming or photos being taken inside their stores. I don't think that's changed, but it's just the way it is. So I would have to go to a different hobby shop and show you guys how to play the game, or give you like a battle report and show you the game as we're playing it. It'll be in that one. I will probably have to do some editing just to show you the basic highlights, so you won't be bored to death with all the downtime and the movements. I'm not saying that it's a boring game, I'm just saying that some of the stuff that we have to do, especially like the actual measuring and moving and deciding what to do, that takes some of the time up, so I'll just cut that down. So you let me know which ones you guys are interested, or if you're interested at all with seeing some of the actual tabletop games that we play in session, so you can actually see how it works and everything. I will go ahead and do that for you guys, and I will take video or even do just pictures and post them up on Twitter. So if you guys like the video or anything, just feel free to comment. I read your comments, and feel free to like the video. Subscribe if you like this kind of stuff, or if you're interested, or these painting tips is helpful or are helpful in any way. I would really appreciate it, and eventually when we actually start streaming and playing some of the actual console games, which I may do also on Wednesday, or I may find myself doing it at another time, which may likely be the case, because when I'm not doing this, I am working, and when I'm not working, well, I have many other things that I have to take care of apart from my job. So this seems to be a little bit too thick, or this is too, yeah. So I am working on this right now. This cape is going to be pretty bright, and the other part, which I was really trying to keep dark, so I might go over that later on. So this is the lighter model, this is the darker model. I'm going to go over this mask here, and we will be able to see exactly everything that's going on with this headgear. There we go. So this might actually be painted when we're actually painting the face. So I am not going to paint any more highlight on that one until I actually get some of that face in there, and possibly get some of the other colors in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some of this yellow here and then add it. So we're going to get a really lighter color here, but just in this little area because of the yellow. This lighter yellow I don't want too thick. I want to make a point so that I know exactly where my paint is going. So we're going here, we're going to paint some of these highlights. Let's see if we can get anything else out of here. This seems almost to be the same color as I was using. It's just a little bit brighter, so you can't really see the highlighted area of it. But we'll see if we can't work on some of the other areas and paint that. Remember, like I said, you don't have to paint all the way up to the adjacent parts of the model, right? It's like the boots or the shin guard or whatever you have going on there, right? You just want to paint the general area and then leave that area that connects the two parts, the skin to a piece of clothing or whatever, so you can get that natural shade, which usually differentiates those kinds of things. So right now, as soon as the paint dries, I can see a little bit more the difference in the color, which is very helpful. Excuse me. Let's see, what else am I going to do? I think I'm going to do this part, lighter green, this lighter green color that we've done in this mixture. And I think I'm actually going to wait to do some more of those greens. So, as you see, this model is darker, so more toward the finished product that we want to do, because we don't have to really dull down any of the areas. But like we were doing with the other area, we're going to do a little bit of this highlighting in the areas that we're talking about. Right? So you can see what it'll look like once you start doing these little highlights and doing a little. This is why I like layering, because you get thin layers of paint which become a little bit translucent, and you can go over. So you can see here, the color is really starting to show up, which is what we want. This part here, go over, highlight the lighter areas, highlight this little stitching. We're going to highlight the bottom part where the light mostly hits, keeping some of the other parts in the dark. Right? Like I said, this one is a female, so we're going to highlight some of the areas around the chest, give it kind of a